So I've been looking forward to a movie coming out that I've seen the posters with Melissa McCarthy called The Happy Town Murders.
I love Melissa McCarthy.
I actually do too. And I like the Muppets. And what is it is described as and what it looks like on the poster is basically, Muppets are just like regular people. They're just Muppets. And
kind of a Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
It is like with Muppets, and it's a murder mystery. Yeah. Correct. And she's a cop who has a partner who is a Muppet. So anyway, that's what I was kind of looking forward to it because it has people involved in it that have been involved in previous Muppet movies. But this is, it is geared toward adults, though. And I kind of figured that, too. So I thought there'd be some cussing, whatever.
Sure.
So I saw the first trailer for it.
Oh, did you?
It wasn't available when we were doing our trailer preview. It's available now. And I'm very, very sorry that I saw it. It is so much for adults. But it's also for that adult 12-year-old boy. You know what I'm talking about? It's got body humor all over it. I was disgusted, Eric, by the preview.
Want to make clear, it is a red band trailer, which means that it only shows at R-rated movies. However, anybody can just get on YouTube and just watch it. I did. And you're right. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And I will say, I laughed the entire time, not necessarily because it's funny, but because it's shocking. I mean, to see Muppets do these incredibly adult, disgusting things, the hookers that Melissa McCarthy has to fend off. The very first word that a Muppet says in this is not suitable for family viewing.
No.
And, I have to question myself. It's like, did I think it was funny or not? But I cannot deny that I was laughing the entire time. Probably because part of it was that I knew that your very judgmental face was peering over my shoulder the entire time. And I knew that it was having an effect on you.
I'm so angry, though. I wanted to see this movie. And now based on the trailer, I do not.
Yeah.
Because if those are the funniest things, because that's what you usually do is put the funniest stuff in the trailer so that you'll go, oh my God, that's hysterical. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
If these are the funniest things, are these sight gags, which are disgusting. And it went on way too long, by the way. Then I'm past.
The final sight gag went on way too long, and that is the joke. The joke is that it goes on way too long.
I get that, but it's also way too long for the joke that goes way too long. I'm sorry. Anywho, all that's I want to say is that I'm disappointed because I'm really looking for that adult Muppet person movie that isn't, you don't have to be disgusting to be clever.
You want it to be adult. You just don't want it to be adult.
Thank you. I also am ready for Melissa McCarthy to do something where she's not so profane. I just want to throw that out.
Get off Stacey's lawn.
Yeah.
Attention. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to operating room 1. Surgery is about to begin.
You are listening to Pop-Oration. I'm Stacey.
I'm Eric, and Stacey and I met actually doing a play where we played twin brother and sister.
Woomates! Hashtag Woomates.
And so this is a movie that I wanted to talk about on this podcast for a while that is also about a twin brother and sister. This is called The Skeleton Twins.
And we saved it for Pride Month.
Because, Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig play the siblings in question. And it's not a gay love story by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But one of the characters is gay. And so it fit into Pride Month pretty well. But, last year we did a whole show about movies around brothers. And then a whole show with movies around sisters. I think the plan was Then let's do a show about movies that have the brother-sister kind of relationship in them. We stopped doing shows about 1,000 movies at once before we got here. So now we're just going to do this one movie. And maybe we'll take a couple others.
Like 5-hour podcasts might not be as commercial.
I don't think we liked them as much either.
We really
so we decided to, for the most part, every once in a while we'll take a look at a theme or an actor or something. But for the most part, if we're going to talk about a film, we'll just kind of talk about one film at a time. And there's a couple of brother-sister films that I love. You Can Count on Me, starring Laura Linney and Mark Ruffalo, is one. Maybe we'll get to that one eventually. This is another. This came out this premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2014.
It's not that old.
No,
it's not that old at all.
Although
4 years old.
Given the history of our country in the last 4 years, a lot has changed. But
true.
But it won awards for screenwriting, and it won the award for Best United States Dramatic Feature at the Sundance Film Festival in 2014. The opening sequence goes like this. Bill Hader is this very intoxicated man who, I don't remember what music he's listening to, but he's got the stereos blaring.
Yeah, I don't remember either. Interesting enough, and I just watched it yesterday.
Writes this weird kind of note that you begin to figure out is probably a suicide note. He gets in the tub. He relaxes, and then you see...
It's something like, see you later, something like that?
Yeah, he writes, see you later, and does he stick it in his fish tank?
Sticks
something in his fish tank. And then he gets into the tub and relaxes until you start seeing the blood wafting up towards his... And you realize he's attempting at least suicide.
He's cut his wrists, and he's gotten in the water like you do in a cliche.
And he's committing suicide in his apartment. Cut to, Kristen Wiig is standing in front of her bathroom mirror with a handful of pills that would kill a cow, much less a little slight woman like Kristen Wiig. And she gets a phone call, and she's being called because her next of kin has attempted suicide.
So she's looking, you're from the camera angle, you're looking at her left hand has it's full of pills, and her right hand is this phone ringing. And she's like, what do I do? Do I take the pills? Do I answer the phone? And you don't know until the next scene when she's walking into his hospital room.
Yeah. And so she's decided to put the pills away and be with her brother, you soon find out. And by the way, this is a really difficult movie to talk about without worrying about spoilers. So tell you what, if you're interested in seeing the Skeleton Twins, I, for one, highly recommend this movie. Turn us off for a moment. Go watch the movie. Come back to this episode because we can't necessarily be too worried about giving stuff away. It's not a spoilery kind of movie, but there are a few discoveries that you make through the movie that, if you don't want them spoiled for you, watch it first. Listen to us later.
Right. I was going to say, you said for a moment. You're going to have to turn it off for a good hour and a half. It's an hour and a half movie or so, but just, no. But yeah. Keep in mind that, this starts with a suicide attempt, and it's a comedy.
It's a comedy drama, right? I mean, part of what we're going to get into as we get into it is this a comedy? Is this a drama? It's in a weird space. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think that if you hadn't cast Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig, best known for Saturday Night Live, it might seem like less of a comedy. I think if there were two actors who were known for being a little bit more dramatic in their oeuvre, then it might seem, a little bit like this is a very serious movie about two siblings who occasionally crack jokes.
Okay, I would like to do a full disclosure at this juncture. I don't care for this film.
Okay.
And this is in our season of where we're like, stuff you should see. And here's what I'm going to say. I don't particularly care for this film, and the reason is the plot doesn't. It's a slice of life film. And I don't particularly care for the characters, and I didn't relate to anybody. But here, I'm going to move on and say, but I am able to compartmentalize so well at my age that I am able to separate whether it's a movie that I personally relate to and like and enjoy seeing. I can separate that from the fact that it's a very well-made film.
Yeah.
Okay. It is written well. It is acted amazingly. And I think that if you are able to relate to these characters or the character or the relationship they have or the relationships they have or the circumstances or whatever, that it is a good movie to see. And even if, here's what I'm going to say this, even if you're just an acting student and you want to see how good actors, comedians, those who are comic actors can do reality, Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader, watch it for them.
Yeah. I was, again, one of the running themes, if you've listened to us at any point in our, short careers podcasters, is that awards are things that we kind of roll our eyes at. And often
we'll mention them because that means they got acknowledged by some group.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
This was a film I was really upset that neither Bill nor Kristen got any love from the Academy for this, because I thought their performances were that good, but it's not an Oscar bait kind of movie.
Not that kind of movie.
If Oscar were better at actually picking out, these performances that really do merit some consideration, and a nomination does mean money. I mean, this is the reason why studios do campaign for this kind of stuff. Didn't get any love from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, to my knowledge, and that made me sad because I thought it deserved some.
But this is a quiet movie. That is what this is. This is, as I said, a slice of life movie. Mm-hmm. This is, several weeks, months, whatever, of these two people's lives. Yeah. And it is about the relationship between these two people, this brother and sister. There are a lot of other relationships that are around it, but the relationship that matters, the relationship that's interesting, in my opinion, the most interesting, is the one between them. Yeah. And it's the one that has the big arc.
Yeah. So the plot, as so much as it is, there's this twin brother and sister. They have been estranged for 10 years. They haven't spoken in a decade. And they're early 30s.
Yeah. That's what I would say.
And he attempts suicide. First spoiler, you find this out in the first 5 minutes, doesn't work. He's in a hospital room with bandages around his wrists, and he's kind of embarrassed about the whole thing. And she goes to visit him. She lives in upstate New York. He lives in Los Angeles, California. He's trying to make it as an actor. And she goes to visit him and says, "You should come home for a while. Like you
stay with me.
Home. Stay with me." So next thing you see is they're driving in a car. It's an interesting shot because it's almost mirrored exactly at the end of the movie.
Oh, no, there's a lot. As I said, there's some really nice directorial technique going on here as well.
So you see this lovely shot where she's driving the car and he's just looking out the window surrounded by the fall foliage of upstate New York. And they do make this little town, Nyack, New York, look very, quaint and, it's your kind of typical small town. And, and they rebuild their relationship basically from nothing because there's been a decade and you don't know why at first. You learn about halfway through the movie. My favorite moment watching it the very first time is that moment when you learn exactly what drove them apart 10 years ago, because it was something that I was actually finding fault in the film when I saw it for the first time. It's like, why do they hate each other? They're so great together. They complete each other's sentences. They clearly need each other so much. What is it that drove them apart? And when you find out what it is, it's worthy of that level of estrangement.
And it's what I liked about, again, keep in mind, I'm compartmentalizing. What I liked about this was the whole storytelling was you got bits and pieces. Yep. You never got this big, I'm going to give you exposition now speech.
Yeah.
It was always you meet these people. And again, it's even the first 5 minutes. You don't know he's committing suicide until you slowly see the water turn red. That is how the whole movie is like that. You don't know until a thing is said or an action is done. And you're like, oh, shit, that's what that. And I loved that. That was, to me, fabulous storytelling.
Yeah.
Show, don't tell, but you don't have to tell me all at once. And you're right. You're sitting there going, what is up with what's going on? Yeah. You're thinking about that, which is good because that means that you are connected, you're connected to the story and you want to know.
Yeah.
As I said, I thought it was wonderful storytelling.
Yeah. So the cast and creative, let's just quickly go through the list. We've mentioned Bill Hader plays Milo, the failed actor, suicidal brother. Kristen Wiig plays Maggie, the twin sister, who is more subtly suicidal.
She has more reservations.
But she kills herself, or tries to, just as often.
Yes.
Who is a little bit more staid. She stayed in the small town where they grew up. She's a dental technician. She didn't try to do anything glamorous. She works in a dental office. And she is married to Luke Wilson, who plays Lance, the very sweet, almost perfect husband.
Except he's an idiot. He's a fucking idiot.
Yeah, he's not the brightest bulb in the door. But again, he clears brush in Nyack,
No, he's
New
a
York,
nice guy. He loves her.
He loves her so much. That's the thing.
He loves her. Now, what she has tried to do, and she makes a comment or whatever, she's trying to have a normal life. Mm-hmm. That's why she married Lance.
Yep.
He's this normal guy. And she has never felt normal. Neither of them have. But she has never felt normal, and she's trying to make up for, she feels, her teenagedom and childhood by having a normal adulthood, becoming an adult.
Yep.
So he's part of that.
Sure.
Luke is part of that. And he did a great job. I've seen him in other stuff. He's a smart guy. He's a good guy. He plays this really well.
Yeah, he plays a dim bulb with a lot of intelligence. Yeah. Because he knows where Lance is. He knows Lance's faults, but he also knows where Lance is
you
wonderful.
have to be extraordinarily smart to play a dumb person realistically.
Yeah, it takes a certain kind of intelligence.
An actor you cannot have a dumb actor play a dumb character. It will not be believable.
Yeah.
But so he did a really nice job, though, because he wasn't a caricature.
Uh-huh. And then the main kind of cast, the rounding out the quartet, is Ty Burrell.
Which, if you've only seen him in Modern Family, take a look. This shows you, again, comic actors showing what they can do. And I've always said that if you have an actor who's good at comedy, they will kick ass in drama as well. It's not always, the reverse is not always true. There are dramatic actors who suck at comedy.
Yeah.
But this is just, I thought this was great for him.
Yeah. And it's very different from his, I mean, he's, if he were typecast, he would have been cast as Lance, the kind of dim bulb husband.
Correct. Little old for it at this point.
Yeah, probably. But now he's working against type. And when you first meet him, you're like, okay, he's Milo's ex. What exactly? But he works at a bookstore. Clearly, they have a history. Mm-hmm. First big spoiler is you end up finding out through small revelations, as it goes on, that he was Milo's English teacher and that they had an affair when Milo was only 16 years old, and it was a scandal. So he is no longer working as a teacher. You see,
which he shouldn't be.
No,
which he shouldn't be.
But you see him, working in a bookstore, and you're kind of thinking he seems kind of worldly and intelligent to be just working at a retail bookstore.
But he also seems like a normal. Yeah. Again, it's that whole idea of you're getting a little bit of information at a time.
Yep.
So you make these judgments and go, oh, he's just this normal guy.
Yeah. But when you know nothing about their relationship, Milo walks into the bookstore very much on purpose, looking for him. As soon as Ty Burrell sees him, he's horrified. He wants to run and hide. And you're like, why? And then you see them together in a car. They have exited the bookstore so that they can have a conversation. And you're like, this is weird. Mm-hmm. And you discover through this conversation that they have some kind of romantic history together, and they haven't spoken in a really long time because Milo's got a whole bunch of lies to tell him about how great life is in L.A. And by the way, nothing to say about his recent suicide attempt. So, Milo's a little full of shit right now. And you're kind of going, why is he acting that way? Well, it's because he's 16 again. In the car with this man that he was probably in love with as a 16-year-old, as much as a 16-year-old can be. And here's this incredibly awkward older guy who doesn't really know what to do with this. And, and when
he's got his own issues. He's got his own denial issues.
And when you find out what the whole history is, that scene totally makes sense. One of the things that I will say, as probably a greater fan of this movie than you, is that this is one of the reasons why this movie holds up to repeated viewings. Because when you do watch that scene again, knowing what is going on, the acting is phenomenal.
That's what I'm saying to you.
They make such good choices. But even though they don't make sense to you the first time you watch them, but they're so committed to it, you don't question the actor's choices. You question the character. Why are they doing that? What is going on? But it makes you curious. And then when these revelations happen later, you're like,
again,
wow.
I love the storytelling and I love the acting and the technical stuff about it. So I will say that it is certainly worth seeing. That's why I can say it is worth watching.
Yep. And if you're Eric, by the way, it's worth watching multiple times. I'm a big fan of this movie.
There you go.
The last actor I will mention, she's only in it for a moment, but she's so good. And she's good in everything she's ever done, period. But she's really, really good in this, is Joanna Gleason shows up.
She's always good.
Oh, she's always so good.
And again, this is just masterclass acting.
Yes. How she creates a character that you could watch an entire movie about.
She's in there for, I don't even know how many minutes.
Probably
it's minutes.
15.
Yeah, maybe.
Max.
Maybe
10.
Yeah.
Because very early on in the movie, Milo makes the mistake of calling their mom.
Yeah.
And doesn't know that she's right around the corner. She's visiting because she does these spiritual retreats, and we learn towards the end of her visit why she was so close to one of her spiritual retreats that's happening right around the corner. He expects her to be halfway across the country when he calls. And so he calls and she shows up. And when Kristen Wiig finds out that their mother is in her house, she is livid. And again, just her face tells such a story. And you're like, what does she have against her mother? And then you spend 2 minutes with their mother and you find out exactly what's going on. We're going to get into that scene a little bit later. Just to quickly note, Craig Johnson was the director. He co-wrote this movie with a man named Mark Hyman, Heyman, Heyman. Don't know how to pronounce that. I am now probably just based on, having to do the research and writing down these names, I'm probably going to go look for other things that they've done just because, again, whether you're drawn to this particular story like I am or not, like Stacey is, these two know how to write a script and know how to tell a story.
I agree 100% on all that.
Yeah. So it's one of the things we kind of started with is, we said suicide, and it's a comedy. Is it? I mean, there's a lot to kind of
It's a dramedy.
There.
Remember that word?
Yeah.
Dramedy?
Yeah. It's the comedy/drama. Because suicide is all over this movie. One of the things that one of the things that you find out about their life history is that their father committed suicide. Yes. So suicide runs in the family. The suicide attempts that we see at the beginning of this film are not the last suicide attempts that you will see. There's one absolutely explicit suicide attempt that you will see at the end of the movie. And then he indulges in some questionable behavior, clearly reckless and dangerous. And it's an open question. Was he trying to commit suicide? He says no. She says yes. The movie doesn't really answer that for you, and it works either way.
Well, they're both obviously there's depression, major depression,
and trauma,
and they never really learned problem solving. They never learned those kind of survival skills. Well, I mean, they didn't have the role models to.
No,
and so
their mother was terrible, just awful, and you could see the effect when you learn about the trauma they went through as a result of their father's suicide. It also explains a lot of her behavior, even though she's a bitch, she's horrible. But you have to love her because it's Joanna Gleason. It explains all of that stuff. It's again, this is a film that I have seen several times, and when you watch it again, knowing what you know after watching it the first time, so much of the performances are even better the second time because what they knew the script, they knew the whole life story when they walked into a scene, even though the audience didn't know everything, and they're just informing you in these really clever, subtle ways of all the stuff that's going on.
All right, we're going to be back in a minute. I don't know whether we're going to be able to say it's either a comedy or a drama, because I think it is both. And dramedy is a stupid word. I'll be the first to tell you that. But I get why that it was created, because you have dramedies that have comedic moments. Is this a comedy with dramatic moments? I'm not sure. Yeah. It's very much a 50-50 thing.
I tell you, when I saw it the first time, it was much more in the comedy camp for me. I think I was very much affected by the fact that I was watching Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig tell this story, and I was so used to laughing at them or with them that the comedic moments just really popped out at me because that's what I was expecting to see. The more I've seen the movie, and when I showed it to somebody who was not a very big fan of SNL, they don't have anything against SNL, but they're not regular watchers of Saturday Night Live.
That's me too.
They didn't necessarily know a whole lot about Bill Hader or Kristen Wiig. They'd never seen the little character she plays with the tiny hands that, so disturbing. And so they just watched it like a movie, and they were like, I thought you told me this was funny. And they really didn't see a lot of humor in it at all. Come to find out, suicide was a theme in their family as well. And so for them, it was bringing up different stuff.
Yeah.
So it really works as both. I mean, Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig milk every moment of comedy they can because I think it's just their nature, especially working together.
And I think that's funny. What you want. In this, for it to work like it does and for it to affect a lot of people. I get that it's very possible I'm in the minority. Mm-hmm. I think you do. I think that was the right choice, is to say you put these actors in who are very good at comedy. Yeah. Okay. And very good at improv, which is important.
Yeah.
And then and you let them find the funny because that's what you need. You do not need Meryl Streep in this because she will not find the funny. I know you love Meryl Streep, but that's not her forte. Sorry, not. But these guys will find the funny.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really good choice. And they did. They found funny. No, it is not a slap your knee kind of funny, but they found what you could find.
Although there is this epic lip sync that happens halfway through the movie where Starship's Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now starts playing. And there's actually what's brilliant about it is it's a cheesy song.
Yes.
It's just, I know when we talked about our John Hughes, Molly Ringwald thing, we went on and on about 80s music. Not every 80s song was a gem.
Oh, no.
Let's just say that.
Oh, no, there were some problems.
It's a dumb song.
Yes.
It sucked when it came out. It still sucks. Sorry, Grace, don't at me. It's terrible, terrible song. But when it's so over the top and when he starts doing this lip sync, it is hysterically funny. And actually that little moment of the song tells a significant story. He brings her out of her shell a little bit in a moment when she is not happy with him at all. And then there's also this little moment where Lance, the husband, kind of comes in to observe what's going on and learns quite a bit about the dynamic between his wife and this man she's barely mentioned, but who is clearly an important person in her, life story. He sees the two of them, and what's interesting, he leaves the room so that they can end this whole lip sync moment of, nothing's going to stop us now together. And it's both hysterically funny, I thought, when I saw it the first time, and really important dramatically to tell the story.
Well, what I also enjoyed was there was this other scene where it's the two of them at her office.
Yes.
And he gets kind of high on the laughing gas. And then they start and here's what I'm sitting there watching and saying, this was improv.
Yeah.
The director said, okay, you're in this office with all this weird shit. Let's see what you can do. Yep. And they kept the good stuff. And, there's stuff on the cutting room floor. But what I enjoyed about both of those scenes, which is imperative to this movie, is the connection they had.
Yes.
I believed they were siblings. I believed, and you felt like Wiig and Hader liked working with each other. They clearly had this chemistry with each other. And it was fun to watch them having fun.
Yes.
And so I loved that about those scenes. Really stood out to me because I just enjoyed them enjoying each other.
Yeah, because these characters do suffer in this movie. I mean, there is suffering that you witness. And they're the only
two that can relate to each other.
Yes, they get each other in a way that nobody else in the world
ever
gets
can
them.
Or will.
Because they lived through this moment. The other thing that the other piece that I loved is the Halloween sequence. First of all, she puts him up. She gets him up in drag as the Bride of Frankenstein, and then she goes as like a cowboy. So they're both kind of in drag in a way, or a farmer, or something kind of butch. But they end up going to this bar, and everyone's dressed up for Halloween, and they're doing their thing. And they start reminiscing about the horrible, horrible psychologist that they were assigned to as children immediately after their father's suicide. Right. And because it's Bill Hader and it's Kristen Wiig, and because we've already gotten to know these pieces, I don't remember whether it's before or after the lip sync. I think it's after.
I think it's after the lip sync, but before the other.
And it's it's after the dental.
After. Right. That's right. It's after. My bad.
But you see them, and you're like, anybody else, they would have to talk about, well, immediately after my father committed suicide, and it would be this draggy kind of thing. But because it's the two of them, and they lived through it together, they can just talk about her awful sweaters and reminisce about this stuff that makes them laugh, even though it's built out of this serious trauma that fucked the both of them up beyond repair, really. I mean, they'll never be fixed from this.
No, but it's also real.
Yes.
Because you don't sit here and give exposition to somebody who's already lived through it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Again, I loved the storytelling technique of this, to where you just got these little bits and then it helped color what you'd already seen.
Yep. And that moment comes right before the moment where, because this is still part of the Halloween sequence, where you find out why they were estranged for a decade. Mm-hmm. What happens is he goes to the bathroom. She's sitting there looking at his phone, and he gets a call from the English teacher, from Ty Burrell. And she realizes that they are back in touch with one another. And she is really upset about this. When he comes back from the bathroom, she's gone. And he chases her down, and she explodes at him. How can you be speaking to him again? And you find out that the reason they haven't spoken in so long is because she blew the whistle on this relationship. And he thought he was in love with his English teacher. She realized that this was an abusive situation. Mm-hmm. So she, put an end to it, and he skipped town and went to LA, and they have not spoken since. And you can absolutely see both sides of this
Of course.
issue. I mean, I side with her as a detached observer and an adult, absolutely side with her on the idea that this needs to stop. But I totally get why, as a lonely, gay, 16-year-old whose father committed suicide, whose mother is horrible, who has no, this is the one bright, shining thing in his life, and she took it away from him.
But it was also his sister.
Yes.
His sister, his twin sister, betrayed.
Yes.
Betrayal.
She was the one who took, and she was the only other bright spot in his life, and she worked one against the other, and he was so upset that he,
basically took both of them out of it.
Yes. And it absolutely believable, and post all this stuff about how good they are for each other, just really tragic and hard. I mean, it's not an easy problem to just say, like, Dear Abby would struggle with this one a little bit. I mean, not to say that, again, she's correct in what she did, but there's a human being on the other side of this, and real cost to that. Changed
their relationship. Well, it killed it for a while. Yeah. But I think, again, it's real. And this is a lot of movie makers will attempt to make these slice of life. Again, I think so many good decisions made.
Yeah.
And the foremost of all of them were these two actors.
Yeah.
And this scene could have gone awry.
Oh, absolutely.
Many of them could have, quite frankly. But this is a big pivotal one that tells the audience a lot that they didn't know.
Yeah.
And again, I thought, technically speaking, it's beautifully done.
Yeah. And you're learning, and the wounds are resurfacing from 10 years ago. And so it's telling a story in real time because she's upset because he's back in touch with him. But it's also saying, oh, by the way, this is, it's a replay from what happened a decade ago.
Oh, yeah. They've had this
fight before. And so now you're getting, at the beginning, all you got was, treating each other very tenderly because you just tried to commit suicide, and only saying the right thing and being really upset if you
and you don't know this person. It's that whole we're polite and we're gonna, and it was so awkward. It was so awkward.
And putting this scene halfway through the movie was just a brilliant way to kind of say, now that you love both of them, let's show you the wounds that they're actually dealing with in a real kind of way. The only other scene I want to talk about in depth is A Visit from Mother, Because again, Joanna Gleason is not part of the quartet of actors that really carry this whole thing.
She's not in it for long.
But she definitely, she has a, I remember when we talked about Network and we talked about, all the great things that Beatrice Straight did with 8 minutes of screen time, I put Joanna Gleason kind of in the same kind of category there. She's so good, and you have to have someone who's really good. You couldn't just give this part to your mom because you wanted to put her in your movie.
No.
She carries a lot of weight because she is the mother. And so this is a very high context relationship. You can't just stop and do moments of exposition.
You needed an actor at or further than the level of the twins.
Yeah.
Because it is pivotal to who they... You have to believe what they've talked about and what they end up, how they are. You have to believe there's a real reason. There was.
And one of the reasons why these two siblings are so bonded is because it had to be the two of them against her.
Yes.
This was not a family where either one of them could sidle up to mom and try to win over one of their siblings because mom was a walking nightmare.
In the beginning, you kind of get a hint before you've met mom, and when Kristen Wiig says something about, if I'd been married to her, I would have jumped off a bridge too. And what that line tells you is that their father committed suicide. You didn't know that until she just does this smart ass comment. And you're like, A, oh shit, her dad committed suicide. B, her mom must be awful.
Yeah.
And then
here comes this brilliant actor to make all of that true.
Yeah.
And the whole time Bill Hader is trying to, he's being a little bit more polite because he feels guilty because he brought her here. Kristen Wiig is having none of it. She's just drinking wine in a corner. You can get the fuck out of my house. Meanwhile, Lance is like, you're the mother of the love of my life. You brought her into the world. I want to get to know you. And I totally understand why he's doing all the things he's doing. But I'm also like, look at your wife. This woman is not a welcome guest in your home, and you're making it worse because stay for dinner, stay for after dinner,
Right. But here's the thing. What this also does is this tells you that Kristen Wiig has not told, she's kept a lot to herself.
Exactly.
Their relationship is based on whatever the hell is in her head of a fantasy.
Yep.
And so, when stuff happens later on, of course it happens that way because you have never been honest with him.
Yeah.
He never, it's that poor, you feel sorry for him because he never knew he was walking in a minefield.
No, he didn't know about all the trauma in the past, and he doesn't know that she's fucking her scuba instructor.
Correct. And several more.
Was fucking her hiking coach before that. And, and people before that, she's
all the hobbies she's had.
Yeah, she takes on all of these.
She's in scuba diving now.
Exactly. And for many reasons, probably. Well, they say they're going to go on a honeymoon and she's going to take scuba lessons so they can go diving together. And he already knows how to dive. So she takes these scuba lessons and, by the way, is screwing her scuba instructor at the same time. And this is not the last time, the first time, rather, that she's been unfaithful. All. She takes birth control pills on the sly while Lance is telling Milo that we can't wait to start a family and we're trying to get pregnant. And Kristen Wiig is smiling and laughing, but she's not trying to get pregnant. She's trying to prevent any pregnancy that might occur either through her husband or the scuba instructor.
Correct.
And again, why do we like this woman? It's just, why do we have any empathy for her whatsoever? It's because Kristen Wiig is playing her. And
in the hands of someone else, it would be completely unwatchable.
Yeah, no, I think it would be really hard to connect with her at all. But you see, interestingly, what I love about this movie is you see the amount of pain that these two have been through by witnessing the amount of joy they experience only with each other. Mm-hmm. They are the only two who can have those kinds of happy, fun, giddy on laughing gas kinds of moments.
It's because only with each other are they free.
Yeah.
Only with each other do they not have to put on a facade.
Yep.
And that's it. And again, you sit there and you go, how fun to watch the two, and you're going, wow, how sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very, very sad.
Yeah. And so, what's it all about? For one, I think it's how shared trauma really creates these bonds. And while we don't ask for people to go through the kind of trauma that these two have experienced, it does create this relationship that is really a gift. I mean, if this was a movie about somebody without a twin who had gone through this thing, they would just be a broken mess on the floor.
Well, there would have been a suicide early on that would have been successful.
Yeah. There would have been no movie. The other thing that it's about for me, that the reason why I'm really drawn to this is that I am from a 2-children family. There's a family of 4, mom and dad, me and my sister. I don't have a brother. And so there's a lot of movies made about brothers that I enjoy, but they're not about me. Mm-hmm. My sister and I are certainly not Milo and Maggie. We're a gay brother and a straight sister, but the similarities pretty much end there. My sister actually is who Maggie is trying to be.
And your parents are alive and well.
And my parents are alive and well, and we're not abusive, and we're not suicidal. And, no, we didn't go through that kind of. But nonetheless, my sister is one of the most important people in my life. And I rarely see that relationship put up on screen. You wouldn't make a movie about me and my sister because it'd be pretty boring. We're much more, we're much more self-actualized.
You're very normal and you're funny and you're fine.
Yeah. Eric and Nicole are way better off than Milo and Maggie are. So Milo and Maggie make for a better movie.
Yes.
But the bond that is being explored there between an adult male and an adult female who are not romantically, connected, but who have this sibling, bond that is very, very important to them. I rarely get to see that in the movies. And so that's one of the reasons why I think for me this movie stands out as well. It could have been about 2 sisters. It could have been about 2 brothers. That would have been easy to do.
And it would have been different, though.
It would have been different.
I think that this...
and it wouldn't have meant as much to me.
Right. And I like the fact, I think that one reason you don't see... they don't make them. That's why you don't see them. They don't make the brother, sister.
Because do people not have opposite sex siblings in the world? I don't get that. Why isn't that? One of the things that if we were going to make a whole show, which I'm glad we're not, about, all the brother, sister movies there are, which there aren't that many, the central thesis for me would have been, why aren't more of these made? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, Are our same-sex siblings really more important to our lives than our opposite-sex siblings?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I have one of each, and I would say no. They're the same. I love them both, and they're different relationships.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more years between me and my brother than there are between Kristen and Bill in this movie, and you and Nicole.
Yeah.
And so we have a different kind of relationship.
Sure.
There are 9 years between me and my sister, so a very different kind of relationship. So, I again. For this movie, I appreciate what they've done because I do. I think that the brother-sister who connect and aren't rivals for daddy's fortune or whatever aren't made very well. Aren't made very much, rather.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I mean, to me, I don't have an answer to that one. I usually come up with a theory about most of these pop culture questions I have. I don't have one for this. I just think it's a big miss. I think, it's a story that can get told a lot more often because not every brother-sister combo is the same. I also kind of get from this movie that she's just as messed up as he is.
Most definitely.
Just as messed up as he is. He's a lot more obviously messed up than she is. And at first I was watching it going, why does the gay guy have to be the one who's so troubled? Because we still have this, it hasn't been that long really since gay was taken out of the handbook of mental illnesses, So I always get a little squirrely when I see someone who is gay and mentally unhealthy. By the time I got to the end of this movie, that didn't bother me at all because I was like, wow, she has, by all the exterior looks of things, she's the normal one and she's just as fucked up as he is.
Correct. And I think that she had more choices in how to fake being normal than he did. Because he was gay. If he had been straight, he could have gotten married to a girl and tried to be normal in that way.
And we learned he was the center of a scandal that shook the town.
Correct. But all of this to say that she was able to, and when I'm saying the word normal, understand I'm putting air quotes around it, because it is her idea of what is normal, what is going to be average, what is going to be the most accepted. But neither of them really know how to do that.
No.
And just because she got she did it in a different way and was able to hide it longer doesn't mean that she was any less. It just means she was able to hide it longer.
But she can't do it. I mean, Lance can be happily married and just eat ice cream and watch TV with his wife on the couch, and that's all he needs out of his life, and he's fine. She can't do it. She can't do it. I mean, she's failing miserably at being the loving, doting wife.
Well, she was never honest with him with who she was.
No,
so
never.
Their relationship is faux. It's not real.
Yeah. It's real on his side. Because he was always honest with her.
No, it was never real. Well, it's not real because who he's in love with doesn't exist.
Well, that's true.
It's not a real relationship. Nobody is in love with anybody who's real.
Yes, but he is in love with somebody.
He is in love with somebody, but she's fiction.
Yeah.
And that's the sad truth that he finds out at the end.
Yep.
Spoiler.
Yep. So yeah, ultimately, what this is about for me is it's a love story, but it's a love story that's not romantic or sexual.
It's like Frozen. Remember at the end? Spoiler.
Yeah.
The sisters save each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what this is.
And in this one, she needs to be saved, and it's not her husband who can save. Not only does he not save her, he can't.
He can't.
It can only be this man who is her brother, who she shared this incredibly painful past with, who has the capacity to save her. And so, again, spoiler, her marriage falls apart through the course of this movie, but she ends up sharing a space with him, and she's better.
Well, they figured out a way to have a relationship.
Yeah.
And it saves them both.
Yep.
Here's what I will say about one thing I did like about this was the fact he is gay. And while that does play into the plot, it is not this big cloud hovering over that. That's the problem. That's just part of who he is, and it contributed to some drama. But it just in the end, he's just this regular. He's a guy who's gay. I mean, that's it.
He's got issues, but that's not his issue.
That's not the problem. That just happens to describe him, but it's not the problem.
He's gay, she's blonde.
Exactly. I appreciated that so much because it was he just happens to be gay.
And I wonder if these two men who wrote the piece, if either of them are gay. It just kind of, because it was clearly important to them to make a movie about a brother and a sister, and he is gay. I mean, that is kind of, it's
one of them is, or they probably have a sibling that is.
Yeah.
I mean, that I think that almost I'm going to say that has to be the fact because it's so well written.
Yeah. And it definitely contributes to his humor. Bill Hader, who has played straight in, he played literally the straight man in Trainwreck in every sense of the word.
Oh yeah, he was yes.
and is not.
He was lovely. He was great.
Yeah, and is straight in real life. Knows how to play a gay man in a very subtle way that absolutely reads as gay to anybody who is gay or knows gay people, but is not a screaming queen.
But here's what I want to say, and I think this goes, again, I'm going to put it to the comic actor. The comic actor is always, when they are observing tics, they're observing habits, they're observing how people behave. For characters later on, you always I'm filing it away for maybe a character later on. They are observing to say, okay, you're able to tell that person over there is gay. How are you able to tell? And then they start dissecting, what is it that makes it obvious that person is gay? And then once you're able to do that, you're able to, and if you're a good actor, you're able to then say, personify it. Yeah. And I think I am not surprised that he is this good at this at all. And I appreciated that it wasn't someone else. I appreciated it that it was these two people who are not, neither one of them are your glamorous, beautiful people.
Yep.
They both come across, they can both be very, much better looking because they can be made up and wardrobe better. But they were both so real.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that so much. And again, so where I come on this is not a movie I'll need to see again. Just, it isn't. But I will say this, I can still say people should see it because technically storytelling, acting, masterclass. It is amazing to watch, and it's so well done.
Yeah. So before we get to our final diagnoses, that might have been your final diagnosis.
That was probably my final diagnosis, sorry.
But a couple of things that I learned when I was reading up on this movie that I thought were funny. Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now was originally supposed to be Hold On by Wilson Phillips. But Kristen Wiig had just done Bridesmaids, which had already done a big lip sync with Hold On by Wilson Phillips to great comic effect.
Yes.
But they felt like they couldn't do it again.
And I agree.
So
I agree.
Yeah, it would have been a bad choice. So what happened was the director stood in front of the mirror and played every cheesy 80s song he could think of and lip synced to them to figure out which would be the funniest one to choose.
That's interesting.
And when they found this one, the idea that it was a duet also just opened up some other possibilities for them to work with. And so that became the instant like, oh my God, we must. And it would better even than We Built This City, which is a worse song.
But I think this was,
this played better for what they were trying to do.
Exactly, I agree.
The other thing is when they were first talking about writing this movie, their initial input was to do your traditional tropey road trip movie. The whole thing was going to be driving him back to upstate New York and all the interesting people they meet along the way.
Right.
I'm so glad they didn't make that movie. That would have been fine.
It would have been a different movie. That would have been a completely different movie.
But this movie would not have existed.
Correct. I think this was
done that.
Yeah.
They probably would have stopped by at Mom's house at some point along the way, so you still would have had the mom scene. But getting to know her husband, getting to know, just their lives.
Placing her in this town that she grew up in, so her reputation is there, and this is how she's chosen to deal with it. I think I loved that idea of watching that as opposed to He Who Ran Away.
Yeah. And it was interesting for him to be in that town because he did run away.
Correct.
And now he's back where he thought he would never, ever, ever be. And also you would have missed out on that scene. Oh, you probably could have done it. But there's this wonderful scene where she meets somebody from her high school days who does have a child, who is the monster child, like the worst. Mm-hmm. And it just solidifies in her mind, I really don't want kids.
I don't want kids.
And actually when Milo first learns from Lance that they're trying to start kids, she looks at her sister like, you don't want kids. Like he hasn't seen her in 10 years, but he knows that.
Right?
And she does not want to be a mom, and that's not who she is. So I have to say my final diagnosis is I loved it. I've seen it multiple times. I will watch it again. I totally get where you're coming from in terms of sometimes movies are not made for you specifically.
Correct.
And I think that movies are better sometimes when they really hit you personally and therefore are not made for everyone. A film we're going to talk about later this season, I hope, it's on our schedule, is August Osage County, Meryl Streep and Julia Roberts, and a whole cast of wonderful people. That's another movie, not for everybody. Mm-hmm. That's not a movie for everybody, but for whatever reason, it hits me on my funny bone. It hits me in the story it's trying to tell. My friend Sydney and I have a theory about that one, that if you have a really fucked up family, you will find August Osage County hilarious. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you'll, and I have a fucked up adjacent family. Like it's just military gay kid. Just that was enough. Mm-hmm. I'm not blaming my parents for that, but I had a weird experience as a kid. And so that just gives me an insight to this one. For whatever reason, I lock into this movie as well. And I love all the characters, even the lechy, horrible English teacher who fucked a 16-year-old student. I look at Ty Burrell and some of his sadder moments where he's suffering too. And I can't help but feel some human empathy for him, even though I really hate how he contributed to the even greater fucked upness of this young boy.
Well, I mean, again, he has a story. He has a backstory. Yeah. And again, I come back to just the technical, in the hands of a different actor, it could have come down really wrong and you wouldn't have any sympathy.
Yeah.
But how he plays it, you sit there and you go, I'm learning about the backstory of Bill Hader, but I don't know your backstory, but I know that you have one to have gotten to this point for you to have been this English teacher who took advantage.
Yeah.
And even he's still attracted to Bill Hader. We have a moment where he's like, and Bill's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he clearly has problems.
Yeah. But Bill Hader starts the movie attracted to Ty Burrell as well.
Yes, but my point is that by the time at the end we have, Bill and Kristen are trying to get out.
Bill
of this
just wants
darkness.
closure, and Ty still wants to get it on.
Right.
And it's two characters who see the same situation in very different ways, which makes it interesting.
Right.
And unlike Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig, Ty Burrell, I don't think has a single laugh line in this whole movie.
Oh, no, this is not a comic role at all.
Yeah. And so they could have cast whoever, like Joe Blow, drama guy. They could have just brought him in to play the English teacher. And I don't know that I would have felt for him at all. And I don't feel for him much. make that clear. But I do have just moments of, especially when he has this really awful screenplay that he's like, hey, since you're doing so great in LA, read my screenplay and bring it back with you, and Milo's like, sure. And then reads 3 pages of it. And it's just like, ugh, this is dreck, and it's such a great, it's a throwaway little bit, but it just says so much about this frustrated English teacher whose career was taken away from him, rightly so.
Correct.
But who kind of wanted to be a man of letters and is now just working at your local Books A Million, trying to make bank.
Mm-hmm. And going to marry a straight woman.
Yeah. Yeah. And is dating a woman while raising his teenage son who doesn't know that he's gay. Oy.
It's a lot. But as I said, technically, my final, which I've already said, technically speaking, this is definitely a movie worth seeing. But this is not a movie I ever need to see again.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, I've seen it multiple times already. I probably will see it again. I love these characters. And the expertise in which the story is told, as we've talked about, just adds to that for me. Yeah.
So look at us be different.
Exactly.
See, we're not. We don't always agree with each other.
Even though we shared a womb.
We did. #wombmates.
You've been listening to Popperation with Eric and Stacey, the podcast that dissects popular culture one bloody organ at a time. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other podcast listening site or app. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Popperation Room. Check out our website at popperationroom.com for all of the podcasts, our blog, swag, and games. Until next time, when we're back in the scrubs.